To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye! There's the rub! For in that sleep of death, which dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause.
And so begins what is probably the most famous speech of all time. Here Hamlet opens with a big question about what it means to be alive, concerning the whole of humanity, and just goes to show the timelessness of Shakespeare's writing. To be or not to be, that is the question. Ironically, is not a question, but a statement, which highlights Hamlet's intelligence, as well as telling us that he's going to explore this question rather than just wondering it. This question of whether it is worth suffering the slings and arrows of life over the peaceful sleep of death. Shakespeare repeats to die, to sleep, in order to emphasize this inner conflict of Hamlet, as he swings back and forth between choosing to take arms or to take his own life. Some critics consider this a detour, Hamlet having just decided to put on a play to determine whether or not Claudius is guilty. However, it could be seen as Hamlet pondering about life and whether it is worth carrying on with his mission, knowing that he is to die at the end. And as well as that, Hamlet's mission for revenge is still present in the speech. He refers to the nobility of the mind, and he proclaims that flesh is heir to suffering, as he himself is heir to the throne. Coming back to peace and death, Shakespeare uses a shift in tone by way of Hamlet's exclamation, "Aye, there's the rub," to show the reason why we don't all choose to end our lives to end our suffering, because to sleep is also to dream. So what do we dream of after death? Anyways, back to the show. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would these fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death? The undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of.
Now, the question of life and death is what Hamlet is kind of faced with, and it's what he's referring to with the line that makes calamity of so long life. And then he goes on to list many things in quite vivid imagery to depict the sort of trials and tribulations that he faces, with the very emotive language that brings out an emotion within both the actor and invokes emotion with the audience, with language such as whips and scorns of time, oppressor's wrong, proud man's contumely, pangs of despised love, law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes. He goes on to talk about the quietus, and this is a Latin word meaning the sort of end of an argument. Here it's to sort of reflect his to secure his release from life, ending his life. Great thought. And he juxtaposes this with the sort of Celtic language of grunting and sweating, which is the sort of trials and tribulations of life and pushing through and struggling. And he talks about ending it with the bare bodkin, which is like a thin needle. And it's quite interesting that Shakespeare believes that life can be ended with something as small and as insignificant as a needle. And then he goes on to talk about the sort of journey between the unknown area of death, and describes it as an undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, as obviously no one really comes back from death. Even the ghost will eventually not return. And yeah, that's it really. Thus conscience does make coward of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied with the pale cast of thought and enterprises of great pith and moment. With disregard, their currents turn away and lose the name of action. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph in thy horizons, be all my sins remembered.
In the final section of this soliloquy, Hamlet seems to finally come to a decision. He makes a profound judgment that conscience does make coward of us all. He agonizes over his tendencies to delay and overthink his actions rather than act. This inhibits the action of a play, as the revenger can't seem to revenge. Convention demands that he kills Claudius, but murder is a sin, and so this religious conscience that Hamlet has creates a conflict which is core to the play. By saying us all, Hamlet widens his scope to point out the failure of human fortitude. It's important to note that the word conscience is capitalized in the first folio. This puts conscious on a pedestal amongst the other words in this line. And so it means that it is essential to setting him apart from other revengers. He continues this idea when he says, native hue of resolution is sickled with the pale cast of thought, meaning the natural colour of decision making is corrupted by the sickly colour of thought. This excessive thought Hamlet seems to have weakens his and our internal resolve to take on anything difficult in life. Thus it turns sick with overthinking. And so the currents turn weary, meaning changes course or becomes unstable as a result of these thoughts. There seems to be a recurring image of being at sea or a turbulent journey. This sort of represents his unstable mindset throughout the play. And he moves on to the topic of Ophelia, who has now entered or has been here the whole time. Whether Hamlet is performing this truly to himself or to Ophelia as a sign of madness, we are unsure of. So again, ambiguity in Hamlet. And he calls Ophelia a nymph, which is a goddess of nature, and that's a term of endearment and delicacy. And the ending of the soliloquy is, be all my sins remembered. And we're not sure if this is to Ophelia or to himself, but this brings back the reoccurring theme of upholding legacy, as the theme of remembering is throughout the whole play, and he mirrors the words of the ghost who says, remember me, remember me. To be or not to be? That is the question.